Chosen one, 24 hours ago, something shifted. Not on the surface of the world, but beneath it. In the unseen layer, the quiet realm, the spiritual field most people ignore until it starts touching their life. Something activated, or maybe it's still activating right now. You didn't hear a sound, there was no announcement, but the effects are already moving into decisions, into emotions, into sudden clarity, into discomfort that has no obvious reason. And if you're here watching this, it's not random. This shift is already brushing against your life. Let me tell you the story. There was a time when you were invisible, not spiritually, socially. You were the one people laughed at because it felt harmless. You were underestimated because it made others feel safe. They spoke over you, defined you, reduced you, and you carried that weight quietly, wondering why life kept putting you in the same position. But here's what most people don't understand about the spiritual realm. When pressure is applied long enough, something awakens. 24 hours ago, the energy around your story changed. The season of being ignored completed its purpose. The silence you lived in was not punishment, it was preparation. While others were busy mocking, repeating cycles, staying comfortable, something unseen was aligning around you. That's why you felt different lately. Not louder, not aggressive, just detached. Your reactions are fading. Your need for validation is weakening. And that scares people even if they can't explain why. Because dominance in this world depends on your insecurity. The moment you stop feeding it, the structure collapses. In the spiritual realm, there's a law. What was sent to break you gets recycled into fuel. Every laugh you absorbed became stored energy. Every insult became momentum. And now, the release phase has begun. The old narrative is cracking. The people who once felt superior are sensing a reversal they never prepared for. They don't know why your presence feels heavier now. They don't know why your silence feels louder. They don't know why your name feels different when they say it. But you do. Because when a spiritual cycle ends, it doesn't ask for permission. It simply moves. And those who benefited from your smallness feel the loss first. This is not about revenge. This is about alignment. You are stepping into a frequency where you no longer need to prove, explain, or react. And in that frequency, old enemies become irrelevant, not defeated, just displaced. If this message is resonating, it's because the activation already touched you. Stay with this video till the end. The next chapters will explain why this shift happened, what it's dismantling, and how to move through it without blocking the blessing. And yes, here, the spiritual contract relieved face. If this feels uncomfortably accurate, hit the like button. And comment ACTIVATED, not for me, but to anchor the shift. Let's continue. 24 hours ago, something moved without noise. No alarms went off. No messages popped up on your phone. The world looked exactly the same, and yet it was. Somewhere beyond what eyes can measure, an activation occurred that didn't need your permission to begin working. It didn't ask whether you were ready, confident, healed, or even aware. It simply happened. And the strange part is this: the effects didn't wait for the future. They began touching your present almost immediately, quietly rearranging the path ahead of you. You might not have felt a dramatic surge of emotion. There was no rush, no sudden miracle moment. But there was a shift, subtle and precise, like a lock clicking into place. Something that had been running on repeat finally reached its end. A cycle that had followed you longer than you realized closed without asking for closure. The energy around your name changed. The weight of opinions, whispers, and laughter that once seemed to hover over you lost its grip in that exact window of time. People may still talk. They may still remember old versions of you. But energetically, What they think no longer carries the same authority. They don't know it yet, but the permission that once empowered their words expired. What activated wasn't success you can post about or progress you can explain in a sentence. It wasn't a visible win. It was authority. The kind of authority that doesn't announce itself but rearranges rooms the moment you walk in. The kind that doesn't fight for validation because it no longer needs it. Something hidden finished its assignment and something higher took its place. The transfer didn't come with applause, but it came with finality. Not long after that shift, something else unfolded beyond your awareness. In a realm where motives matter more than appearances, your name was spoken again. Not in accusation, not in complaint, not as a problem to be managed, but in recognition. There was a time when people thought your story had already been decided. They assumed the verdict was permanent, that the labels placed on you were sealed and settled. They moved on believing the case was closed. But what they didn't see was that a higher authority never agreed with that conclusion. The case was reopened, quietly, deliberately, without consulting anyone who once judged you. Words that had been spoken over you, even the ones disguised as jokes, sarcasm, or just being honest, began to lose their legal standing. Statements that once carried weight started unraveling on their own. It wasn't dramatic. No confrontations, no public reversals, just a steady undoing. The same people who once felt confident in their assessments are now reacting to changes they can't trace back to a single moment. They feel the shift before they understand it. What's happening now has very little to do with them, even though they feel strangely unsettled. Their reactions are responses to a decision they were never invited into. They're sensing outcomes without access to the cause. That's why the confusion shows up first. That's why resistance feels ineffective. The judgment they released is finding its way back to its source, not as punishment, but as truth returning to sender. You may have noticed something else recently, something subtle but undeniable. The laughter isn't as loud anymore. The commentary feels forced. The people who once spoke freely now pause mid-sentence, change the subject, or grow uncharacteristically quiet when your name comes up. This didn't happen because you defended yourself better or finally explained your side. It happened because restraint was applied. Permission was removed. In a realm they don't consciously acknowledge, the green light they once had turned red. They don't know why their words feel heavier now. They don't know why speaking against you no longer gives them the same satisfaction. All they know is that something feels off. What used to roll off their tongue now sticks in their throat. Confidence has been replaced with hesitation, arrogance with unease, silence with discomfort. And that silence isn't peace. It's containment. It's the sound of boundaries being enforced without debate. What's important to understand is that none of this started when results became visible. Your growth didn't begin when circumstances changed or when others finally noticed improvement. It began earlier, in a moment of alignment that didn't require an audience. While people were still speaking to an outdated version of you, something within you had already shifted position. Protection was put in place before progress was revealed. Advancement began while attention was elsewhere. That's why the reactions now feel delayed. People are responding to an upgrade that already finalized. They're catching up to a version of you that has been active longer than they realize. The mismatch is jarring for them. They're trying to use old language on a new reality, old assumptions on a sealed transformation. And no matter how hard they try, it doesn't land the same way anymore. This is also why certain connections feel strained or suddenly irrelevant. It's not because you've become cold or distant. It's because your frequency changed. Not emotionally, not socially, but spiritually. You were reassigned. The channel shifted. Conversations that once reached you now fall short, not because you're above them, but because you're no longer tuned to the same signal. Criticism echoes without impact. Drama feels muted. Old triggers don't activate the way they used to. This isn't numbness, it's immunity. It's what happens when alignment produces authority. Some people stayed on an old frequency because it was comfortable, familiar, and safe. You didn't. And now the distance feels confusing to them, even though it feels natural to you. They may try to reach you the same way they always have, using the same tone, the same tactics, the same assumptions. But the signal doesn't carry. Not anymore. What's unfolding isn't about isolation. It's about precision. Access is being filtered without effort. Influence is being refined without explanation. You're not pulling away, you're being positioned. And the positioning didn't start when anyone noticed. It started when the activation did, quietly, decisively, 24 hours ago, when something unseen but undeniable began shaping what comes next, and it hasn't finished speaking yet. There's something unsettling happening for them now, and it has nothing to do with your actions. They are being required to acknowledge what they once tried to erase, not because they've grown kinder, wiser, or more reflective, but because reality itself has started correcting them. Life is no longer cooperating with their denial. Your name creates hesitation where confidence used to live. Your progress triggers a quiet collapse inside places they don't talk about. They replay old assumptions and realize they no longer fit the evidence in front of them. This isn't revenge playing out. It's consequence arriving on time. What makes it heavier is that the recognition comes without comfort. There is no reconciliation attached to it, no moment where everything is smoothed over and made emotionally satisfying. They are forced to see without being invited back in. They are forced to acknowledge without being restored to influence. That kind of recognition doesn't heal the ego, it humiliates it. Truth enforces itself without asking whether they're ready, and the lesson arrives without an apology attached to it. That is the weight they are carrying now. At some point, confusion turned into desperation. When they could no longer explain your rise using familiar narratives, they started looking for shortcuts. Surely there had to be something hidden, something unfair, some secret assistance that justified their discomfort. They searched for loopholes because they couldn't accept obedience. They wanted proof that discipline alone couldn't produce what they were witnessing. They needed an excuse that would let them keep their original opinion intact. But the investigation turned against them. Every place they looked for manipulation revealed consistency instead. Where they expected compromise, they found endurance. Where they expected advantage, they found alignment. The record didn't expose you, it exposed them. And when the final excuse collapsed, what remained was unbearable clarity. They weren't just wrong. They were wrong without justification. That kind of realization doesn't correct behavior, it multiplies envy. Now something more subtle is unfolding. History is being rewritten in small conversations and careful tones. The same people who once resisted you begin to imply they always believed, always supported, always saw potential. This isn't growth, it's survival. When momentum becomes undeniable, alignment becomes strategic. But memory is watching. Witnesses exist. Energy remembers what mouths try to revise. The spiritual realm does not allow edited truth to overwrite lived reality. False alignment reveals character faster than open opposition ever did. Opposition is honest. It stands where it stands. But opportunistic agreement exposes motives under pressure. You don't have to confront it. You don't have to correct it. Truth stands alone long enough for masks to fall on their own. What they never realized is that the transfer was completed without conflict. The moment you stopped caring, power changed hands. Not when you argued better, not when you proved yourself, not when you were finally understood. When indifference replaced reaction, the connection lost its fuel. They assumed you were still emotionally engaged, still responding, still needing something from them. But the moment you stopped feeding that dynamic, it collapsed entirely. That was the moment relevance was removed. Emotional sovereignty locked in. They became observers in a story they once tried to control, watching from the outside, unable to intervene, unsure where influence ended and distance began. You didn't take anything from them. You simply detached, and in that detachment, authority settled fully into your hands. Some of them see the truth now. They recognize it internally in flashes of uncomfortable clarity, but recognition does not always produce repentance. True apology requires a level of self-examination they haven't developed. So what comes instead are fragments, partial admissions, soft language, blame divided into safer portions. This is not deception, it's limitation. Their growth cannot carry the full weight of responsibility. Silence becomes their confession, not because they have nothing to say, but because saying it would require becoming someone they are not yet capable of being. Ego protects itself by withholding full acknowledgement, and so the truth remains unspoken, heavy, and unresolved on their side alone. While all of this is processing for them, you are already elsewhere. They are still talking about the shift, still analyzing what changed, still trying to understand when control slipped away. You don't hear these conversations because you are no longer positioned to. That level is closed. The door didn't slam, it simply no longer opens. Your life moved forward while theirs stayed in analysis. Growth outpaced explanation. Advancement outran dialogue. Closure happened without conversation. You didn't need to announce your departure from that space. Movement did it for you. And underlying everything, steady and irreversible, is the truth that what activated cannot be undone. The transformation crossed a point of no return. Even those who opposed you are now witnesses to it. Not participants, not contributors, witnesses. They watch from a distance as something unseen governs what is now visible. The greatest victory was never being acknowledged. It was becoming untouchable. What began quietly now determines what unfolds openly, and the momentum continues, unconcerned with approval, untouched by resistance, already shaping what comes next. What activated wasn't meant to be explained, it was meant to be witnessed. If this resonated, it's because you're already inside the shift. Don't scroll past it. Acknowledge it. Hit like to lock it in, comment what changed for you, and stay connected. This story is still unfolding.